The stars above New Seattle Colony suddenly vanished, replaced by something that should not exist. Captain Derek Hayes stood on the bridge of the Earth defense vessel Valiant, staring at the view screen with his mouth slightly open. Where empty space had been moments ago, there were now ships, hundreds of them. They appeared without warning, without any energy signature, without any trace of how they arrived. The ships were beautiful in a way that hurt to look at. They seemed to be made of crystal that shifted colors, flowing between solid and liquid and something else entirely. Each vessel was enormous, dwarfing the largest human warships like whales next to minnows. They hung in space above the colony, silent and still, reflecting the light of the distant sun in colors that had no name. "Captain, we're getting the same reports from every colony," Lieutenant Amy Brooks said from her station. Her voice was steady, but her hands shook as they moved across the controls. These ships appeared above all 17 colony worlds at exactly the same moment. Earth, Mars, Alpha Centauri, all of them. Derek felt his stomach drop. A coordinated appearance across light years of space all at the same instant. That should be impossible. Faster than light communication didn't work that way. Nothing worked that way. "Are they responding to our hails?" he asked. "Nothing yet, sir. But they're broadcasting something on all frequencies." "It's in our language," Derek nodded. "Put it through." The voice that filled the bridge was smooth and ancient, like wind over stones that had stood for 1,000 years. It spoke English perfectly, but with an accent that suggested the speaker had learned the language by reading human minds, rather than studying recordings. "Humans of Earth and her colonies, you have entered territory that belongs to the ascendants. We have ruled this region of space since before your species discovered fire. We shaped life on 100 worlds while your ancestors were still climbing trees. We are eternal. We are perfection. We are what lesser beings call gods." Derek exchanged glances with Amy. She looked as disturbed as he felt. The voice continued. "You will abandon 12 of your 17 colonies within 30 of your days. You will provide tribute of resources and technology. You will accept our overseers on your remaining worlds. You will acknowledge our divine right to rule. This is not a negotiation. This is how things are and have always been." The transmission ended. The crystal ships remained, hovering silently over every human world, waiting. The next 24 hours were chaos. The Colonial Council convened an emergency session. Derek watched the debates through a secure link, growing more frustrated with each passing hour. President Helen Ross, a tall woman with gray hair and tired eyes, led the faction arguing for compliance. "We've analyzed their ships," she said, her voice carrying the weight of impossible choices. "The materials alone are beyond our understanding. The energy readings suggest technology centuries ahead of ours. If they wanted to destroy us, they could do it in an afternoon." General Victor Stone, commander of the Earth Defense Forces, stood at the opposite end of the chamber. He was a big man, built like a boxer who had gone into politics but never forgotten how to fight. "So we just surrender? Give up 12 colonies? Billions of people displaced? And for what? Because someone shows up and claims to be gods? It's not about what we want," Helen replied. "It's about survival." Ambassador Peter Grant raised his hand. He was younger than most of the council members, chosen for first contact scenarios because of his reputation for creative diplomacy. "I'd like to attempt communication before we make any decisions. Perhaps they can be reasoned with." "You heard the transmission," another council member said. "They said this isn't a negotiation." "Then I'll find out what it is," Peter said. 2 days later, Peter Grant stood in a shuttle bay preparing to travel to the lead ascendant vessel. Derek had volunteered to pilot him, and the council had agreed. As they flew through space toward the massive crystal ship, neither man spoke. There was nothing to say that wouldn't sound like a prayer or a curse. The ascendant ship absorbed their shuttle like a drop of water entering an ocean. One moment they were flying toward a solid surface. The next they were inside a vast chamber filled with light that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The walls shifted and flowed, showing images of worlds and stars and beings that might have been the ascendants themselves. A figure materialized in front of them. It was vaguely humanoid, tall and thin, with skin that gleamed like polished metal. Its eyes were too large, too bright, containing depths that suggested intelligence far beyond human understanding. It wore robes that moved like living things, shifting colors with each breath. "I am High Sovereign Zeltharn," it said. The voice was the same one from the broadcast, but hearing it in person was different. It resonated inside Derek's chest, made his bones ache with the weight of ages. "You are the ambassador. Peter stepped forward, keeping his voice level. I am. I'd like to discuss the terms you've proposed. There are no terms to discuss, Zeltharn said. He sounded genuinely confused by the suggestion. We have stated what will happen. You will comply. All species comply eventually. Why? Derek asked, unable to stop himself. Why do you need us to comply if you're so powerful? Zeltharn turned those two bright eyes on him. Need, we do not need. We simply are. You are young species, crude and violent, racing toward your own destruction. We offer guidance. We offer peace. We offer a place in something greater than your brief, meaningless lives. And if we refuse? Peter asked. Then in 100 years your grandchildren will beg for what we offer today. We are patient. We have time. You do not. The meeting lasted another hour, but nothing changed. Zeltharn explained that the ascendants had ruled for 50,000 years, that they had transcended mortality, that they had achieved perfection. He showed them images of other species, beings that had accepted ascendant rule and had been elevated, made beautiful and eternal and content. He offered Peter and Derek the same gift, immediate transformation into something greater than human. Peter declined politely. Derek said nothing, but he memorized everything he saw. Something about it all felt wrong. The perfect ships, the perfect beings, the perfect empire. It was too clean, too orderly, too much like a museum display of how things should be rather than how things actually were. On the flight back, Peter broke the silence.
They're serious.
They really believe they're gods. Yeah, Derek said. But did you notice what they didn't have? What? Weapons! Those ships are enormous, but I didn't see any weapon systems. No gun ports, no missile tubes, nothing. And Zeltharn talked about how they've ruled for 50,000 years, but he didn't mention any wars. No battles, no conflicts, nothing. Peter considered this. Maybe they're so powerful they don't need weapons. Maybe, Derek said. Or maybe they've forgotten how to fight. The Colonial Council debated for 3 more days. President Ross pushed for acceptance. General Stone demanded military preparation. Smaller factions argued for everything from immediate evacuation to religious worship of the ascendants. Derek attended one session and found himself standing to speak without planning to. I've seen their ships up close, he said. I've met their leader, and I think they're bluffing. The chamber erupted in argument. Ross called for order, then fixed Derek with a hard stare. Explain. They have advanced technology, no question. But they talk like conquerors who've never been challenged. Every species they've encountered has just rolled over for them. They don't have weapons. They don't have battle tactics. They have a really good entrance and a really impressive speech, but I'm not sure they know what to do if someone says no. You're betting billions of lives on a hunch? Someone shouted. I'm betting billions of lives on being human, Derek shot back. We're good at one thing, maybe the best thing we do, and that's not knowing when to quit. They want us to look at their shiny ships and their perfect faces and just give up. I say we find out what happens when someone doesn't. The vote was close, but in the end, the council decided to reject the ascendants' demands. They gave Derek and General Stone 2 weeks to prepare whatever defense they could manage. It wasn't much time, but it would have to be enough. Derek returned to the Valiant and gathered his senior officers. Amy looked at him with worry in her eyes. Do you really think we can fight them, sir? No, Derek said honestly. But I think we can surprise them. And sometimes that's enough. He pulled up star charts of ascendant territory, marking the positions of their ships, their colonies, their territory. I want to know everything about them. Where they came from, what happened to the species that lived here before everything. If we're going to fight gods, we need to know what gods bleed. Outside the viewports, the crystal ships hung in space, beautiful and terrible and waiting. The countdown to humanity's answer had begun, and in 17 colony worlds, humans prepared for war against beings that claimed to be eternal. Derek knew the odds were against them. He knew most of his crew would probably die. He knew that historians, if any survived, would probably call this the moment humanity's arrogance destroyed them. But he also knew that every human who looked up at those ships felt the same stubborn fire burning in their chest, the fire that had carried them from caves to colonies, from stone tools to starships. The Valiant slipped through ascendant territory like a whisper through a library. Derek had taken his ship on what the official logs called a reconnaissance mission, and what he privately called a suicide run. With him were 50 volunteers, including Dr. Lisa Morgan, a xenoarchaeologist who had begged to come along, and Commander Jake Sullivan, a Marine who looked like he could wrestle bears and probably had. They traveled to Kethvar, a dead world deep in ascendant space. The star chart showed it had once been home to a thriving civilization called the Keth. Now it was empty, its cities abandoned, its people gone. Not destroyed, just gone, as if an entire species had simply decided to walk away from everything they had built. Lisa stood on the surface of Kethvar, surrounded by ruins that still held their shape after thousands of years. The buildings were made of a material that resisted scanning, elegant towers that rose toward a sky no longer watched by their creators. The cities were intact, preserved perfectly like museum pieces behind glass. "This is wrong," she said, running her gloved hand along a wall covered in alien writing. "When civilizations fall, they leave mess. War, decay, natural disaster, something. This looks like everyone just stopped what they were doing and left." Jake and his Marines spread out through the city, weapons ready. But there was nothing to fight. Just empty streets and silent buildings and the weight of absence pressing down on everything. Greg Palmer, the Valiant's chief engineer, worked at a structure that might have been a power station. He was a thin man with quick hands and a habit of talking to machines like they were people. "Captain, I'm getting some strange readings here. There's still power in these buildings. Very faint, but it's there. Been running for at least 3,000 years without maintenance." Derek joined him at the power station. "Can you access their computer systems?" "Already working on it. Give me an hour." It took 3 hours, but Greg was good at his job. The computers came online gradually, filling the empty city with soft light. The screen showed text in an alien language, but Lisa had been studying Keth writing since they landed. She began translating, and with each word her face grew paler. "It's a historical archive," she said. "Records from the last days of Keth civilization. Captain, you need to see this." The records told a story that made Derek's blood run cold. The ascendants had arrived at Kethvar 5,000 years ago, with the same message they had given humanity. Submit or face consequences. But the Keth had submitted immediately, awed by the ascendants' power and beauty. They had welcomed their new rulers with joy. At first, nothing seemed wrong. The ascendants shared technology, cured diseases, ended wars. They were perfect rulers for a peaceful age. But slowly, over generations, things changed. The Keth began to forget their own history. Their children learned to speak the ascendants' language instead of their own. Their culture, their art, their identity, all of it faded like paint in the sun. The final entries were the worst. They were written by a Keth historian who had realized what was happening, but could not stop it. "We are being elevated," he wrote. "The ascendants say it is a gift, and my people believe them. They are changing us body and mind, making us more like them. In 3 generations there will be no Keth. There will only be servants who once were Keth, who have forgotten they were ever anything else." Lisa found more records in other parts of the city, medical facilities that showed genetic manipulation, education centers that taught Keth children to worship the ascendants as gods, technology that could rewrite memories, adjust personalities, make people happy to serve. It was not violent. It was not even cruel in the way cruelty is usually understood. It was simply complete. "They don't conquer," Lisa said, her voice shaking. "They absorb. They take everything you are and make it part of them, and they make you grateful for it." Derek felt sick. He thought about the colonies the ascendants wanted humanity to abandon. He thought about the overseers they wanted to place on human worlds. He thought about what would happen in 100 years if humanity accepted their rule. "Can we stop it?" Jake asked. His hand rested on his rifle, but he knew the weapon was useless against the kind of enemy they faced. "I don't know," Derek said, "but we're going to try." They spent 2 more days on Kethvar documenting everything. Greg made copies of the Keth computer systems. Lisa collected samples of the technology used for genetic manipulation. Jake's Marines secured several devices that appeared to be used for memory modification. All of it went into the Valiant's cargo hold, evidence of what the ascendants really were. On the 3rd day, as they prepared to leave, the air in the abandoned city began to shimmer. Derek felt a pressure in his mind, like something vast trying to push its way inside his thoughts. The crystal ships materialized above them, appearing out of nothing the way they always did. A figure appeared in the city square, walking through a wall as if it were made of mist. It was High Sovereign Zeltharn, looking exactly as he had during their first meeting. His 2 bright eyes fixed on Derek with something that might have been amusement. "Captain Hayes," he said, "you are investigating matters that do not concern you." Derek kept his hand away from his weapon. It would do no good anyway. Everything about what you're doing concerns me. I've seen what you did to the Keth. We elevated them. We gave them peace, purpose, eternity. They live still as part of us serving a greater design. Zeltharn moved closer, and with each step Derek felt that pressure in his mind increase. You see this as a crime. We see it as salvation. You erased them, Derek said. You took everything they were and destroyed it. We transformed them. There is a difference. Zeltharn gestured, and images appeared in the air around them. Derek saw beings that might have been Keth, beautiful and eternal like the ascendants themselves, working in crystal halls, tending to massive machines, singing in harmony with voices that resonated across dimensions. They are happy. They are perfect. They have transcended the limitations of mortality. They're slaves, Jake said. They are children who have grown up, Zeltharn replied. You cannot understand because you are still children yourselves. Violent, crude, trapped in bodies that decay and minds that cannot grasp eternity. The pressure in Derek's mind became overwhelming. He felt Zeltharn inside his thoughts, reading his memories, understanding his fears and hopes and dreams. It should have been terrifying, but Zeltharn's presence was gentle, almost kind. He saw himself as Derek's father, trying to guide a stubborn child toward enlightenment. You could be so much more, Zeltharn said directly into Derek's mind. I can feel your intelligence, your determination, your capacity for greatness. Why cling to mortality when you could live forever? Why remain limited when you could transcend? I offer you this gift personally, Captain Hayes. Join us. Become eternal. Become perfect. For a moment, Derek felt the temptation. He saw himself transformed, saw his aging body made young and strong, saw his limited human mind expanded to grasp concepts that currently felt impossible. He saw himself living for thousands of years, watching stars being born and dying, understanding the fundamental nature of reality itself. It was beautiful. It was everything humanity had ever dreamed of achieving. Then he thought about Lisa, studying alien ruins because she loved understanding how others had lived. He thought about Greg talking to machines like old friends. He thought about Jake and his Marines, crude and violent maybe, but loyal and brave and free. He thought about all the humans across 17 colonies, imperfect and mortal and choosing their own paths. No, Derek said, pushing back against the presence in his mind. We're fine the way we are. Zeltharn withdrew and the pressure disappeared. He looked at Derek with something that might have been respect or might have been pity. You choose suffering over perfection. You choose death over eternity. I do not understand humans. I know, Derek said. That's why you're going to lose. Zeltharn laughed, a sound like wind chimes made of crystal. Lose, Captain, we have ruled for 50,000 years. We have elevated 100 species. We have transcended the cycle of life and death. We are gods, and gods do not lose to mortals. We'll see, Derek said. Zeltharn regarded him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Very well. I release you as a curiosity. Return to your people. Tell them what you have learned. When your colonies burn and your people beg for mercy, I will remember this conversation and offer you the gift you refused today. Perhaps then you will be wiser. He vanished, and with him went the crystal ships. Derek and his crew stood in the empty city, breathing hard, hands shaking from the encounter. Amy's voice came through Derek's communicator. Captain, are you all right? We detected massive energy signatures. We're fine, Derek said. Get us back to the Valiant. We're going home. The journey back to human space took 5 days. Derek spent most of that time in his quarters, reviewing everything they had learned. The ascendants were powerful, no question, but they had not fought a war in millennia. They conquered through awe and manipulation, not violence. Their strength was real, but it was the strength of ancient stone, impressive but brittle. Lisa knocked on his door late in the evening of the 3rd day. She looked exhausted but excited. I've been analyzing the technology we took from. 5 days remained before the Ascendant's deadline, and Earth had become an anthill that someone had kicked. Ships moved between planets at maximum speed. Factories that had built farming equipment retooled to make weapons. Colonies that were supposed to be preparing for evacuation instead dug shelters deep underground and filled them with supplies for a long siege. General Victor Stone stood in the war room beneath Geneva, surrounded by screens showing every human colony, every ship, every resource they could bring to bear. It was not enough. Even with every human united, every weapon they had, it would not be enough to win a conventional war against the Ascendants. But Stone had not built his career on fighting fair. Dr. Nathan Cross entered the room carrying a tablet and looking like he had not slept in days. He was the head of the Quantum Research Division, a secret program that most of the Colonial Council did not know existed. He had been working on Lisa's theory about the Ascendants network for 72 hours straight. "Tell me you have good news," Stone said. Nathan set his tablet on the main table, pulling up complex equations that looked like mathematical poetry. The Ascendants' collective consciousness operates through quantum entanglement across vast distances. It's how they coordinate perfectly, how they share knowledge instantly, how they appear in multiple places at once. It's also how they maintain control over the species they've absorbed. Can we disrupt it? Yes, I've designed a quantum disruption field generator. It won't damage their ships or hurt them physically, but it will sever their network connections. Each ascendant will be isolated in their own consciousness for the first time in millennia. Nathan looked up and there was something like fear in his eyes. "General, I need to be clear about what this means. We'll be forcing them to experience individuality after thousands of years of collective thought. It might drive some of them mad." "Good," Stone said without hesitation. "How long to build this device?" "I have 3 prototypes already built. I need 2 more days to build enough to cover Earth's orbital space. You have 48 hours. After that, the deadline expires and we're fighting whether we're ready or not." Nathan nodded and left. Stone turned to the other people in the room. Kate Martinez, intelligence officer, stood near a display showing ascendant ship positions. Commander Nina Clark, who ran Earth's Experimental Weapons Division, reviewed ammunition counts and power levels. Captain Ryan Cole, newly promoted to command the Mars defense platforms, studied approach vectors and firing solutions. "Kate, what's the status of our resistance networks?" Stone asked. Kate was a small woman with sharp eyes and a talent for appearing where she was not supposed to be. She had spent the last 2 weeks setting up hidden communication networks and supply caches across every human world. All colonies have resistance cells ready to activate. If the Ascendants take any of our worlds, they'll face insurgencies that make their perfect empire very messy. "Good. Nina, weapon status?" Nina was tall and muscular, looking more like a soldier than a scientist. She had been working on kinetic weapons after Lisa's report suggested the Ascendants' shields were optimized against energy weapons. "We've converted everything that can carry a railgun into a weapons platform. Mining ships, cargo haulers, even some civilian transports. They're not pretty, but they'll throw metal slugs fast enough to punch through shields." Ryan, Mars defenses? Ryan was young for his rank, but he had proven himself in border skirmishes against pirates. He looked at the numbers and shook his head. "We're not ready, sir. If the Ascendants come in force, Mars will fall. But we can make them pay for it," Stone nodded. "That's all I'm asking. Make them pay for every inch." The next 2 days passed in a blur of preparation. Every human in 17 colonies knew war was coming. Some were terrified. Some were defiant. Most were both. Derek took the Valiant to lunar orbit, positioning his ship among the defense platforms that bristled around Earth like angry porcupines. Amy stood beside him on the bridge, watching the countdown clock tick toward 0. "Do you think this will work, sir?" "Honestly, I think we're going to lose a lot of people. But I also think the Ascendants are going to learn something they forgot a long time ago." "What's that?" "That mortals fight hardest when they have something to lose." The deadline arrived at midnight Earth Standard Time. Across human space, people held their breath. President Helen Ross, who had argued for surrender but agreed to support the war effort once the decision was made, broadcasted from the presidential bunker. "To every human, on every world, I want you to know that we face this together. We did not choose this fight, but we will not run from it. Whatever happens in the hours ahead, remember that we are human. We are free, and we will not kneel." Ambassador Peter Grant appeared on screens across human space moments later. He looked directly into the camera, his voice steady and clear. "High Sovereign Zeltharn, you gave us 30 days to accept your rule. Here is our answer. No. We reject your authority. We reject your claim to divine right. We reject everything you represent. If you want our colonies, come and take them. But know that every human from Earth to the furthest outpost is ready to make you bleed for them." The message was broadcast on all frequencies, translated into every language, sent to every ascendant ship in human space. It was defiant, almost insulting. It was designed to provoke. It worked. 6 hours after the deadline expired, the Ascendant fleet appeared in Earth's solar system. Not the small forces that had been hovering over the colonies, but the full might of their empire. 500 crystal ships materialized between Mars and Jupiter, each one larger than Earth's biggest space stations. They hung in space like a field of diamonds, beautiful and terrible. High Sovereign Zeltharn broadcast one final message. His voice was different now, harder, touched with something that might have been anger. You have chosen suffering. You have chosen death. You have rejected the gift we offered. Very well, we will break you, and when you beg for mercy, we will remind you of this moment when you threw away salvation. The fleet began moving toward Earth, steady and unstoppable. General Stone watched them come, waited until they crossed the orbit of Mars, then gave the order that would change everything. All units, weapons free, activate the disruption field. Show them what humans do when cornered. The first quantum disruption generator came online at Luna Base, operated by Dr. Nathan Cross and a team of scientists who knew they were probably about to die. The device hummed, building power, then released a pulse that human sensors could barely detect but that rippled through quantum space like a shockwave through water. Every ascendant in the solar system felt it at the same moment. The network that connected them, that had linked their minds for thousands of years, suddenly shattered. Each of them was alone for the first time in memory, isolated in their own consciousness, feeling mortal and small and terribly vulnerable. In that moment of confusion, humanity attacked. The defense platforms around Earth opened fire. Railguns accelerated metal slugs to a fraction of light speed. Nuclear missiles launched by the hundreds. Converted cargo ships armed with improvised weapons charged forward, firing everything they had. The attack was not sophisticated. It was not elegant. It was human warfare at its most basic. Throw everything you have at the enemy and hope something hits. The Ascendant's shields were designed to deflect energy weapons, to absorb sophisticated attacks, to counter advanced tactics. They were not designed for solid chunks of metal traveling at relativistic speeds. The first railgun rounds punched through the shields like paper, smashing into crystal hulls and shattering them. 3 Ascendant ships died in the first 30 seconds. Then 5 more. Then a dozen. They tried to coordinate, to respond. But without their network, they were individuals who had forgotten how to think alone. They panicked, something they had not felt in millennia, and in their panic they made mistakes. Ryan Cole watched from his command station on Mars as the battle unfolded. All platforms focus fire on the ships moving toward Earth. Protect the homeworld. The Mars defense platforms added their firepower to the barrage. More Ascendant ships fell, but the counterattack came quickly. Once the initial shock wore off, the Ascendants began to fight back. They had weapons after all. Terrible weapons that had not been used in thousands of years because no one had challenged them. A beam of pure white light stabbed out from an Ascendant flagship, touching a human destroyer. The ship simply stopped existing, unmade at a molecular level. Another beam. Another ship gone. The Ascendants moved through the human fleet like wolves through sheep, and where they passed, destruction followed. Mars platforms taking heavy fire, Ryan reported. His voice was calm, but Derek could see the damage report scrolling across his screens. Platform 7 is gone. Platform 3 is losing integrity. Derek wanted to help, wanted to do something. But the Valiant was needed at Earth. He watched helplessly as Mars defenses died one by one, buying time with their lives. Lieutenant Sam Parker flew her fighter through the chaos, leading a squadron of pilots who knew they were not coming back. The plan was simple: get close enough to launch nuclear missiles directly into the Ascendant ship's power cores. It was suicide, but Sam had volunteered anyway. Ghost Squadron, weapons free. Make every shot count. 6 months passed and humanity did not wait for the Ascendants to return. Admiral Derek Hayes, promoted after the battle at Earth, led task forces deep into enemy territory. The strategy was not to conquer, but to liberate. Every world where the Ascendants kept subject species received the same message. You do not have to worship them anymore. The first world they reached was called Theon, home to a species the Ascendants had absorbed 300 years ago. The Theonites looked like birds that had learned to walk upright, covered in blue and green feathers that rustled when they moved. They had been servants so long that they barely remembered being anything else. Derek stood in the main plaza of Theon's largest city, surrounded by thousands of confused Theonites. They stared at him with large golden eyes, trying to understand why these strange humans were telling them they were free. "We are here to help you remember who you were," Derek said through a translator. "The ascendants have controlled you through technology that modified your memories and your genes. We can reverse it if you want. You can be Theonites again, not servants." An elder Theonite stepped forward, his feathers gray with age. "Why would we want that? The ascendants gave us peace. They gave us purpose." "They are gods. They're not gods," Derek said gently. "They're just another species, old and powerful, but not divine. And they took everything from you to make themselves feel superior." The elder did not believe him. Most of the Theonites did not believe him, but some did, especially the younger ones who felt something missing in their perfect, peaceful lives. Dr. Lisa Morgan and her team set up medical stations where Theonites could choose to have the genetic modifications reversed, to have their true memories restored. The process was slow. Some Theonites chose freedom and then could not handle the weight of remembering what had been taken from them. Others adapted, reclaiming their culture one piece at a time. And some, like the elder, refused treatment entirely, preferring the comfortable lie to the painful truth. But word spread. Other subject species heard what was happening on Theon. Some sent messages begging for help. Others contacted the Ascendants, warning them of the human threat. The Ascendants' perfect empire, held together by manipulation and control for thousands of years, began to fracture. Commander Ben Foster led diplomatic missions to newly freed worlds, helping them establish governments, defending them when Ascendant loyalists attacked, teaching them they could stand on their own. He was a patient man with a gift for languages, and he spent hours learning each species' culture, showing them respect the Ascendants never had. On a world called Dravix, home to a reptilian species with silver scales, Ben helped establish the first free government in that sector in 1,000 years. The Dravix had been warriors before the Ascendants came. Now they remembered their nature and volunteered to join humanity's fight. "Why do you help us?" a Dravix general asked Ben. "What do you gain from our freedom?" "Allies," Ben said honestly, "and the knowledge that we're doing the right thing. The Ascendants have controlled this part of space too long. It's time for something new." But not all the freed species were grateful. Some blamed humanity for destroying their peaceful existence. Others, realizing what had been done to them, sought revenge against anyone who had served the Ascendants. The liberation became messy, complicated, violent in ways Derek had not anticipated. On a world called Keshar, civil war erupted between those who wanted freedom and those who wanted the Ascendants to return. Derek watched from orbit as cities burned, knowing that human intervention had sparked this conflict but unable to stop it once it started. "We broke something we didn't fully understand," he told Amy. "The Ascendants' control was evil, but it was stable. Now we've shattered that stability and people are dying because of it." "Would you rather have left them as slaves?" Amy asked. "No, but I wish there was a cleaner way to do this." "There never is. Freedom is messy." While humanity liberated worlds, the Ascendants struggled to maintain control. High Sovereign Zeltharn convened a council of the oldest and most powerful Ascendants, beings who had lived for tens of thousands of years and seen empires rise and fall. They met in the crystal halls of their home world, a planet-sized construct orbiting a dying star. Zeltharn stood before them, his perfect form showing signs of strain. The defeat at Earth had shaken him deeply. The loss of the network connection during battle had given him nightmares, moments of feeling small and alone and mortal. He hated it. "The humans must be stopped," he said. "They are destroying everything we have built." An ancient ascendant named Kethazar responded. She was even older than Zeltharn, her crystalline form filled with light that had seen the birth of stars. "Perhaps what we built deserved to be destroyed." The council erupted in argument. How dare she suggest such a thing? The Ascendants had brought order to chaos, had saved countless species from their own violence and stupidity, had created an empire that had lasted longer than most civilizations existed. But Kethzar was not finished. "When was the last time any of you felt truly alive? When was the last time you created something new instead of maintaining something old? We have become statues, beautiful and perfect, and dead inside." A younger Ascendant named Talshara spoke up. She was only 2,000 years old, practically a child by their standards. "I felt alive during the battle at Earth. For the first time in my existence, I felt fear and excitement and the possibility of failure. It was terrible. It was wonderful. It was mortal," Zeltharn said with disgust. "Yes," Talshara agreed. And I understand now why the humans rejected our gift. Mortality is not a curse, it is what gives life meaning. The debate continued for days. Some ascendants wanted to crush humanity with overwhelming force, to reassert their dominance through violence they had not used in millennia. Others, especially the younger ones, began to question everything they had been taught about perfection and eternity, and what it meant to truly live. Meanwhile, Derek's fleet approached the Ascendant homeworld. Intelligence from freed species had revealed its location, and Derek knew that if they could reach it, could demonstrate that even the heart of the Empire was vulnerable, the psychological impact would be enormous. The fleet was larger now, including human ships and vessels from freed species. The Draviks contributed 3 warships. The Keth, descendants of the species Derek had studied, sent 2 more. Others joined as well, former servants ready to face their masters. As they approached the homeworld, the fleet encountered ascendant defenses. These were not the ceremonial ships that had appeared over human colonies. These were weapons platforms built in an age when the ascendants still remembered how to fight, upgraded over millennia to levels of power that made human technology look like stone axes. The first wave of attacks nearly destroyed the fleet. Energy beams that could unmake matter struck human ships and nothing could stop them. Derek watched 3 vessels die in seconds, vaporized so completely they left no debris. All ships, evasive maneuvers, he ordered. Do not engage directly. Use speed and unpredictability. The fleet scattered, dancing through the defensive fire, taking losses but surviving. They deployed the quantum disruption generators, but here at the homeworld the effect was weaker. The Ascendants had adapted, creating backup systems that maintained some network functionality even under disruption. But the attack was never meant to succeed militarily. It was meant to send a message. Nowhere is safe. Even here at the heart of your empire we can reach you. Even gods can be touched by mortals. Derek broadcast on all frequencies, knowing the Ascendants would hear him.
High Sovereign Zeltharn, I did not come here to destroy your homeworld.
I came to talk. The response came quickly, Zeltharn's voice strained and tired. You dare attack our most sacred place and then ask for dialogue? I dare many things, Derek said. That is what being human means. Will you meet with me? Or will you hide behind your defenses while your empire crumbles? There was a long pause. Then space shimmered and Zeltharn appeared on the bridge of Derek's flagship. He looked different than before. Some of the perfection was gone, replaced by something more real, more vulnerable. The battle at Earth had changed him in ways he was still trying to understand. Speak, Zeltharn said. Derek gestured to the view screen, showing the diverse fleet that had accompanied him. Your subjects are remembering who they were. Your empire is falling apart. You can fight us and maybe you will win. But the cost will be everything you claim to value. Order, peace, stability, all of it gone. Or you can accept that your time is over. You want us to simply surrender? To abandon 50,000 years of civilization? I want you to join it instead of ruling it. Your technology, your knowledge, your experience, these things have value. Share them freely instead of using them to control. Be partners instead of masters. Zeltharn laughed bitterly. You want gods to become equals with mortals. You truly do not understand what we are. I understand that you are afraid, Derek said. I saw it at Earth when your network failed and you had to face battle alone. I see it now in the way you have fortified your homeworld instead of coming to crush us. You are afraid because for the first time in thousands of years, you are not certain of victory. The negotiation chamber was built on neutral ground, a small moon between human and ascendant territory. It was a simple structure, nothing like the crystal halls where the ascendants normally conducted their business. Plain metal walls, basic gravity generators, furniture designed for function rather than beauty. The ascendants who entered looked uncomfortable, as if the lack of perfection physically pained them. Admiral Derek Hayes sat at one end of a long table. Beside him were representatives from humanity and the freed species. Commander Ben Foster, a Dravik's general named Korthax, a Keth scholar called Vayan. At the other end sat Tal Shara and 3 other young ascendants who had chosen to attend. Thank you for coming, Derek said. Tal Shara nodded. She had chosen to appear in a form closer to her original species, before the transformation into crystalline perfection. She looked more vulnerable this way, more real. We come because we must. Our empire is dying. Better to guide its end than to watch it collapse into chaos. Your empire does not have to die, Ben said carefully. It just has to change. Change into what? One of the other ascendants asked. His name was Vrenkar, and he looked angry as if being in this room was a personal insult. You want us to give up everything we are. Our power, our immortality, our divine purpose. You never had a divine purpose, Korthak said bluntly. The Dravik's general did not believe in diplomatic niceties. You had power and you used it to make others worship you. That is not divine. That is tyranny. Vrenkar stood, his crystalline form blazing with light. We saved your species from destroying themselves in nuclear war. We gave you peace and prosperity. And this is how you repay us? You took our choice, Korthak said, standing as well. He was half Vrenkar's height but showed no fear. You made us into something we were not. Yes, we were violent. Yes, we had problems. But they were our problems to solve, not yours to erase. The room erupted in argument. Derek let it continue for a while. Let both sides vent the anger and pain that had been building for months. Then he raised his hand for silence. We are not here to debate the past. We are here to decide the future. The question is simple. Can we coexist or must we keep fighting until one side is destroyed? Talshara looked at Derek with eyes that held thousands of years of memory. Coexistence requires equals. The ascendants have never been equals with anyone. We ruled. That is all we know. Then learn something new, Derek said. That is what humans do. We learn, we adapt, we change. It is uncomfortable and difficult and sometimes painful, but it is also how we grow. The negotiations continued for days. Small progress was made. The ascendants agreed to stop absorbing new species. They agreed to release control over several worlds, but they would not agree to give up their fundamental nature, their belief in their own superiority. On the fifth day, High Sovereign Zeltharn finally appeared. He materialized in the center of the chamber without warning, causing security to reach for weapons before Derek waved them down. Zeltharn looked different. The perfection was cracked, showing something raw underneath. I have been thinking, he said without preamble, about what you said at Earth, that we have forgotten how to live. And, Derek asked, you were correct. The words seemed to cause Zeltharn physical pain. We achieved transcendence and then stopped moving. We became museums of our own greatness, maintaining rather than creating. We ruled other species because we had forgotten how to value ourselves. Talshara stood. High Sovereign, what are you saying? I am saying that I am tired, Talshara. I have lived for 12,000 years. I have seen stars born and die. I have reshaped matter with my thoughts and walked between dimensions. And I cannot remember the last time I felt joy. He turned to Derek. You mortals, you burn so briefly, but you burn bright. You feel things we have forgotten how to feel. Perhaps that is worth more than eternity. The other ascendants stared at him in shock. For the High Sovereign to admit weakness, to suggest their way of life was flawed, it violated everything they believed. You speak of surrendering our nature, Vrenkar said. Becoming mortal again. That is death. No, Zeltharn said quietly. What we have now is death. Beautiful eternal death. Mortality is life, even if that life must end. Over the next weeks, the ascendant civilization fractured completely. Some, led by Vrenkar, refused any compromise. They withdrew to distant systems, determined to maintain the old ways even as their empire crumbled. Others, the majority, cautiously approached the freed species and humanity with offers of cooperation. And a small group, including Talshara and Zeltharn, made a choice that shocked the galaxy. They chose to reverse the process that had made them immortal. They chose to become mortal again. Dr. Lisa Morgan supervised the process. It was delicate work, unraveling thousands of years of modifications, returning crystalline consciousness to biological form. Not all of them survived the transition. Some had been in their transcended state too long and could not adjust back to mortality. But those who did survive emerged changed, diminished in power but somehow more real. Zeltharn was one of the survivors. He woke in a biological body for the first time in 12,000 years and immediately felt things he had forgotten. Hunger, fatigue, the ache of muscles that had not existed for millennia. And underneath it all, a strange feeling that took him hours to identify. Contentment. Derek visited him in the medical facility on Luna. Zeltharn sat by a window, watching Earth turn below, looking small and fragile and completely human in his borrowed body. How do you feel? Derek asked. Limited, Zeltharn said. Vulnerable, temporary. He paused, then smiled, an expression that looked strange on his newly organic face. Alive, I feel alive. What will you do now? Learn. I have access to 12,000 years of memory, but I realize now I was not paying attention to any of it. I was observing eternity, not experiencing it. Perhaps mortality will teach me to value each moment. That's all any of us can do. Zeltharn looked at Derek with new understanding. You humans, you face death every day. You know your time is limited. And yet you build civilizations, create art, love each other despite knowing loss is inevitable. How? Because the fact that it ends is what makes it matter, Derek said. If we had forever, nothing would be urgent. Nothing would be precious. Every day would be the same. But knowing our time is short makes us want to fill it with meaning. Over the next 5 years, the galaxy transformed. The Ascendant Empire became the Cooperative Alliance, a federation of equal species sharing knowledge and resources. Some ascendants maintained their transcended forms, but approached others with humility instead of arrogance. The formerly absorbed species rebuilt their cultures, combining old traditions with new innovations. Not everything was peaceful. Wars still happened. The Ascendant loyalists under Vrenkar occasionally attacked Alliance worlds. Some freed species could not forgive the Ascendants and refused cooperation. Pirates and warlords exploited the chaos of the transition. But overall, the galaxy was freer, more diverse, more alive than it had been in 50,000 years. Derek retired from the military at age 55 and moved to a small colony world called Haven. It was a peaceful place, far from the centers of power, where former enemies learned to be neighbors. He built a house near the ocean and spent his days reading, gardening, and occasionally advising young officers who sought his wisdom. Zeltharn visited him there one afternoon. The former High Sovereign was now approaching 60 years of biological age, his hair gray, his face lined with the experiences of a mortal life. He walked with a slight limp from an injury that had not healed perfectly, something that would never have happened in his transcended form. They sat on Derek's porch, drinking tea and watching the waves. Zeltharn had become a teacher, helping other ascendants understand mortality, counseling those who struggled with the transition from gods to people. I was asked today why I chose this, Zeltharn said. Why I gave up immortality and power to become this fragile temporary thing. I told them about our conversation at Earth when you rejected elevation. What did you tell them? That you understood something we had forgotten. That meaning comes from limitation. That beauty comes from imperfection. That love matters because loss is possible. He sipped his tea, savoring the taste in a way he never would have when transcended. I told them that being a god was magnificent, but being human is miraculous. A young reporter from the Alliance News Network came to interview Derek a few weeks later. She was fresh out of school, eager to capture the story of the war that had changed everything. She set up her recording equipment and asked the question that everyone wanted answered. Admiral Hayes, why did humanity fight the Ascendants when they offered you everything? Immortality, power, peace, perfection. Why choose suffering instead? Derek thought about all the people who had died at Earth. He thought about Sam Parker flying her fighter into an Ascendant ship. He thought about Ryan Cole dying at Mars. He thought about 23 million humans who had paid the ultimate price for freedom. They offered us everything except the right to choose our own path, he said. They wanted to make us into something we were not, even if that something was better by their definition. And the one thing humans will never surrender is the right to choose who we become, even if those